Are your daily activities still creative and stimulating, or have you fallen into a repetitive trap? Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the All Around Growth Podcast. This is episode number 153 of the show, which is intended to give you insight and tools to build the life and homestead of your dreams. The quote that began today's show is directly out of The Rudder of the Day by Dan Miller, author of 48 Days to the Work and Life You Love. And we will continue reading as we head down the driveway, and this will be our fodder for conversation during this morning's commute. Again, are your daily activities still creative and stimulating, or have you fallen into a repetitive trap? While driving through the Cotswolds of England on a family vacation, I was reminded of the simple kinds of work still being done by the people there. Many of them raise sheep, shear wool, and barter with neighbors for products and services they need. Their houses are quaint, with charming personalities, yet simple and utilitarian. In early evening, they may meet with friends at the local pub for fish, chips, peas, and a little ale. Their lives seem to be uncomplicated, varied, and full of meaningful family times. In the rapid growth of the industrialized United States, we have confused bigger with better, more work with more, quote, success, and in the process lost many simple pleasures. Often our work is little more than a paycheck and may fall into a boring, repetitive process, long since devoid of challenge and appealing engagement. Quote, "The world will never be happy until all men have the souls of an artist. I mean, when they take pleasure in their jobs." Close quote. August Rodin. As far back as 1776, Adam Smith saw the dangers of moving in this direction. In his highly influential Wealth of Nations, he wrote that the person who spends his life performing the same repetitive tasks tends to lose the habit of exertion and, quote, generally becomes as stupid and ignorant as it is possible for a human creature to become, close quote. Wow, now that's not a pretty picture. Unfortunately, much of our work in this country has moved us towards those boring, repetitive tasks. If your daily tasks could be completed by a trained monkey, watch out. You are at risk not only of brain deadness, you are also highly at risk for being replaced. Quote, "All men are action of dreamers." Close quote. James G. Honecker. Here are some questions you might ask yourself. Do you admire your boss and the philosophy of the company? Do you identify with the products or services that your company provides? Is your work using your best talents? Are your spouse and children proud of the work you are doing? Are you where you thought you'd be at this stage of your life? Yes, it requires challenge to keep our creative natures engaged. But where there is no challenge, there is a clear danger of stagnation or arrested development. And before we ask a couple questions to give us some direction for the day, we'll read a little quote from the Bible. "A man can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in his work. This too, I see, is from the hand of God. For without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? To the man who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God." Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses chapter 4, 24 through 26. And the questions to give us some direction for today are what do people say about your work, and how do you describe your work to others? Now, I'm going to repeat many of these quotes as we hit the road, but for the first 5 minutes, this seemed like a great way to start the week. This book is full of, well, just like the title says, stories and wisdom to kickstart your workday. And no matter where we are in life, we're always going to be doing work. Whether we're employed by someone else or whether we're self-employed, no matter where we are on this path in life, besides death, the one thing that we all have in common is the work that we do in some capacity. Now, we begin reading today with a simple question about our daily activities. Are they still creative and stimulating? Or have we fallen into a repetitive trap? There's something to be said for ritual and routine in the morning and evening to begin our days. But if the ritual and routine that we engage in is in preparation for a day that lacks creativity and stimulation, then we are likely already in the repetitive trap. And that's okay. I've been there before. I got out. I'm there again. And I'm working my way out. And that's part of the purpose of this show. In the process of working my way out of the repetitive trap that I find myself in again, I am actively restructuring my life. And this is a process. Actively creating a new life is a process that takes years. And if you've listened to this show for any length of time, we're 153 episodes in, and the show isn't that old. It dates back to 2020. But I reference things that have been taking place in my life a decade prior. And this process of growth and development is what I refer to as all-around growth. And for me, that's building the life and homestead of my dreams. And hopefully it is for you too. And hopefully for both of us, it involves getting out of the repetitive trap that we are in, if that is indeed where we are. If you are not there and you are daily engaging in work that is stimulating and creative, good on you. You are a step ahead of some of us that are not quite there yet. But as we continue reading about the Cotswolds of England and the families there and how they live and how many of them raise sheep, shear the wool, and barter with neighbors for products and services that they need, living a simple life. That's something that we oftentimes don't do. And I am working with my family to engage in a lifestyle and build a lifestyle and create a lifestyle that embraces many of those aspects that were written about in this story. I'd like to even think that the cabin that my parents built, as it ages a little bit and we all settle into it, that may be seen one day as a quaint house with a charming personality, simple and utilitarian. But we read that with the rapid growth of the industrialized United States, the rapid growth and industrialization of our lives, because where you may be listening, you may not be in the United States. You may be one of our friends in Europe, Australia. I'm not entirely sure. But regardless of where you are, you have most certainly experienced the industrialization of the world. And at some point, either you or someone close to you has confused bigger with better and more work with more success. And when I read about, in that whole process, losing many of the simple pleasures and reading that our work is little more than a paycheck, that statement may have resonated with you a little bit more deeply than you'd like. Well, that's all right, because it does with me too. And in that process, yes, we have lost many simple pleasures. And we've fallen into that boring, repetitive process, long since devoid of challenge and appealing engagement. Now, Adam Smith, in the quote that we read from him when he wrote Wealth of Nations, which I've never read, and I feel like I should add that to the reading list, since Dan Miller is referring to Wealth of Nations, written by Adam Smith, as a highly influential book. But he wrote that a person who spends his life performing the same repetitive tasks tends to lose, quote, the habit of exertion, close quote, and, quote, generally becomes as stupid and ignorant as it is possible for a human creature to become, close quote. That is not the most pleasant statement to read. With the human creature becoming as stupid and ignorant as it is possible for it to become, we are literally talking about the devolving of the human species, when we are in a time that we should be evolving at a rate greater than any other time throughout history. We are living in one of the most magnificent times in history. But I'd like to think that anybody who is a man of action and subsequently a dreamer, as James Honecker wrote and Dan Miller shared with us, that all men of action think that the current moment is the greatest moment ever. And if you don't think that, why not? Every moment that we have is a great moment, because every moment that we have may be our last. And this life is short. And on this day, July 19th, 2021, this is the 200th day of the year. And as I talk about the short duration of this life, We think about the fact that we're 200 days into 2021, well past the halfway point. What are we doing with our lives? Are you asking yourself questions about the work that you do? Are you asking yourself questions about the boring and repetitive tasks that you're engaging in on a daily basis? Are you asking yourselves, why? And finally, some other questions that you can ask yourself in addition to those are, go ahead. Some questions that you might ask yourself. Do you admire your boss and the philosophy of your company? Do you identify with the products or services that your company provides? Is your work using your best talents? Are your spouse and children proud of the work you are doing? Are you where you thought you'd be at this stage of your life? And I'd really encourage you to think about those questions, and I'll go through them one more time right before we end the show so that you don't have to go back and try to figure out where those questions are, so you can write them down. We're almost at the end of the show, but right before I shut it down, I'm going to share those 5 questions with you. Those questions that you can ask yourself. And those 5 questions are important, along with the questions of what do people say about your work? And how do you describe your work to others? So I'll hit that again in just a second, but if you like what you hear and you enjoy the show, I would encourage you to go to the show notes and check out the resources there. I will link to The Rudder of the Day by Dan Miller, and I will also link to the 48 Days community so you can learn more about that there. If you are an Apple listener, an iTunes podcast listener, there's a link in the show notes to click and rate and review the podcast as well. It's in all caps. You can do so there. That really helps the algorithms. But if you are not, please give it a rating on your podcast player of choice. Better yet, one thing that you can do if you like what you hear to support the show is simply spread the word. Share it with some friends, loved ones. Simply spread the word on social media. There is an easy to follow link in the show notes as well for all the episodes. That'll give you the ability to scroll through each episode, take a look at the show topics in the past and see what appeals to you. And last but not least, we have a growing community of like-minded people on Telegram. t.me/allaroundgrowth is something you can search for in your internet browser. If you've already got the Telegram Messenger app on your phone or devices, great. Search for All Around Growth in the groups and you will find us there. And finally, if you would like to support the show via Patreon, I have an account set up. It is in its infancy, and I am working on getting some tiered packages there for those who wish to utilize that platform to support the show. And that is in the works. But if you'd wish to do so with it as it is right now, you are welcome to do that. And the link is in the show notes. Now again, those questions to ask yourself are, do you admire your boss and the philosophy of the company? Do you identify with the products or services that your company provides? Is your work using your best talents? Are your spouse and children proud of the work you are doing? And are you where you thought you'd be at this stage in life? So those 5 questions are great questions to take into consideration as you go through the path that you're on. There are certainly questions I will be reviewing myself, asking myself, and expanding upon, along with the final two questions that we are asking ourselves to give us some direction for today. What do people say about your work? And how do you describe your work to others? Well, again, hopefully this has helped provide some insight and some tools today in the form of questions to help you build the life and homestead of your dreams. That's what I'm trying to do. It's my pleasure to share that journey with you in the form of a podcast. And it would also be my pleasure if you shared your journey with us in the Telegram group. So check it out, t.me/allaroundgrowth. Hope to see you there. I hope you have a great day, a great week. And I appreciate you tuning in today. Thank you.